Greetings, brothers and sisters. We're continuing our study in the book of Galatians. I really appreciate your interaction. Marco Polo is a blessing and a benefit because it enables us to communicate the truth. Remember, with our hearts we believe, with our mouth we speak, and are saved. So this is an opportunity for you to contemplate and digest the message and then to speak it in faith, believing. And so just push that blue button down there and speak, and then hit the red button. Keep it to 5 minutes, of course, as we try to do. So today we're looking at Galatians 3, verses 15 to 21, and what we see in these verses is an example. And Paul's very clear statement here that we become righteous in God's eyes when we believe the gospel. So this, of course, was contrary to the false teachers in Galatia who stated, oh yeah, sure, we might need the gospel, but we also need the law. If we want to go on to perfection and mature in our Christian lives, we need the law. And they were focusing the Galatians on the law. So Paul's going to make a very clear and very powerful example or illustration about this very point. And what he's going to do is to say that Abraham believed and it was credited to him as righteousness. But during that time, there was no law to obey. And so the law didn't come until, as you know, 400 years later. And so there's no way that Abraham could be declared righteous through obedience to God, because number one, he was already righteous, and number two, there was no law to obey. That's Paul's point. So it's very important to understand that the old covenant law was temporary. The law is not God's character engraved on stone and therefore permanent. No, it had a shelf life. Notice in verse 19, if you guys want to just focus on one verse, focus on this verse and look at what it says, Galatians 3:19. The law was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. This is added until. It just means that it was temporary. The law was added at Mount Sinai and was only in place until Jesus died on the cross, at which time the old covenant died and a new covenant was made. I really appreciate Charles Spurgeon's comments on this. He said that the law engraved on stone tablets was ground to powder at the cross. The law is no longer the power of sin for us. It no longer condemns us because it condemned Jesus in our place. And when Jesus died, it died, and we are free. Now, I just want to illustrate this for you. I just want to give you another picture. I was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist, believing very strongly in keeping God's law. All 10 commandments, thank you. After all, it was God's character revealed to us. It was God's desire for us. And so I taught the need to be obedient to God in everything. Everything. I taught that all 10 commandments were in force today and was God's revealed will for his people. But have you ever noticed in 2 Corinthians 3 that God himself calls the old covenant a ministry of death in verse 7 and a ministry that brought condemnation in verse 9? And I could verify the truth of that, because as long as I was focused on the law, as long as I tried to live up to God's high standards, I felt this heavy weight of condemnation on me, and I experienced death in my relationship to God and in my marriage and in many other relationships. And Paul is saying in Galatians 3 that the old covenant law was temporary. It was added until, you see, temporary, until Jesus came and made a new covenant. The old covenant said, obey God perfectly and continually, and you will live eternally. And that covenant died at the cross. The new covenant says, I have lived in your place perfectly and continually. I have died to remove your sin forever. And if you believe that message, you are righteous, you are perfect, you are holy forever. The effects of believing this message are to escape the curse, to be free from all condemnation, to be lifted out of death, and given new life. The question for this week that I have for you to really consider is, are you trying your best to obey a covenant that does not exist? Or are you living in the freedom purchased for you at the cross? Let's discuss that this week. I look forward to hearing from you.